What's happening, everybody? Trey here, joined by my dad, Sean, and today, reactions to the classics. We are going to be going over the best records of the 1990s, going to be drafting 10 records apiece. Yep. So this is going to be a fun one. If you haven't checked out our 60s, 70s, and 80s drafts, we also did videos for them for each year, as well as the overall decade list, like the one you're watching today. So that should be a good time, man. I think I'm a bigger fan of 90s music than you are, Dad, but throughout our drafts, you found some good gems in there.
I don't think that's a hot take on your part. You like to bring some hot takes. That's not one. Yeah, I didn't. Going into the 90s, I remember the music is not that great, right? Going through it, I still remember it as not being that great, but I did find some hidden gems and hearing some groups that I really enjoyed, which some of them are going to pop up on this list, so I won't talk about them. But if you don't know how this works, we're just going back and forth on that. Usually we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's just Trey goes, I go, Trey goes, I go. This decade wasn't nearly as hard for me. I thought the 70s were nearly impossible to do this on. The 80s were pretty difficult. This wasn't all that difficult for me to come up with my albums. There was none that I was like, oh no, what am I going to do here? So I guess without further ado, you got the first pick, and I think there was one clear number one for me, and you took it.
Yeah, I'm going Radiohead's OK Computer, not a blistering hot take by any means right here.
But a perfect choice.
Just an absolute bona fide classic, man, that I think stands up, with other masterpieces from the bands of the 60s and 70s that we talk about, right? I think, too, it's aged so beautifully in the fact that it's, talks about technology and just the modern day life and how that's taken over. So I think that's why it just celebrated 25 years of its anniversary.
Crazy,
and you go back, listen to it, and so much of it still holds up, not only lyrically, of course, but I mean musically. It's still
the atmosphere, man.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. Of course, Karma Police, Let Down, Paranoid Android, No Surprises, amongst many others. If you've never listened to this record, be sure to give it a spin.
Yeah, well, my number one album.
Dude, this was going to be my second pick.
And something that a lot of people wouldn't think that I would pick, but Nas, Illmatic.
I'm impressed, Ed.
I wanted it in 1994, but you had the first pick, so
right.
I took Biggie instead, if you remember right. The fact that Nas was only 20 years old when he made this makes it all the more impressive. You got New York State of Mind, The World Is Yours, It Ain't Hard to Tell, Memory Lane, and Life's a Bitch, which don't we all know that? But Trey, you know this album way better than I do, because you know hip-hop way, way better than I do. So go ahead and share your thoughts on it.
Man, one reason I really like this album is it does transport you to that 90s New York, even though you've never been there. But it
doesn't sound dated.
No, it doesn't. I mean, you have some of the great producers of the era in hip-hop history on this. I mean, DJ Premier, Pete Rock, among many others. The guest verses on here from AZ, Q-Tip from A Tribe Called Quest is fantastic. And Nas's just storytelling ability is just fantastic.
It is, man.
I don't know all of Nas's catalog, but I know 5, 6 of his records, and I'd put him up there with not only the great rappers, but just great songwriters, storytellers, and music history in general. Because man, he does strike a chord, and again, just tell stories that still resonate all this time later.
Well, I know this obviously has such high acclaim, and you mentioned it before how great it was. I never listened to it until we did this journey, so this is one of them. I was just blown away. I remember what I was doing. I was doing some yard work, and I throw on Nas, and I'm like, wow, man, this is a little bit different, man.
No, that's awesome, man. And now for my next pick, going to another one of my favorite artists and great songwriters of all time, Elliott Smith's Either Or, his third record, man. Again, kind of at a point in Elliott's career where he's progressing past just the kind of lo-fi acoustic stuff and going into the more heavily produced, using the studio as his toolbox, so to speak, that he would get on his later records like XO and From a Basement on the Hill. Right. But I think this is a nice sweet spot for it. Say Yes, one of the big hits on it, Between the Bars, Angelus, 2:45 a.m. actually my favorite off this, and a few of these tracks you'd hear on the great movie Good Will Hunting as well. But love me some Elliott Smith.
Yeah, and also one of the great rock mysteries. Look it up if you don't know about his death. All right, next up for me, this was easy as well. R.E.M, Automatic for the People, 8th studio album. John Paul Jones and some of those strings. We recently just did an album listening party at the time of this film. We just did it last week, which is a perk if you're a patron. So if you haven't checked out our Patreon link, check it out below. You get to vote on album listening parties, and this one won. But Only went to 2 in the US, 1 in the UK. 6 singles, sold 18 million copies. Man on the Moon, Night Swimming, Everybody Hurts. I mean, Buck and Mills think it's the best album they ever did. I actually like Murmur that much more, but this one's the most acclaimed.
Oh yeah, man! You cannot go wrong with Automatic for the people. I think that's going to rank high for a lot of people, and one of my personal favorite records of all time from one of I think one of the more underrated bands. We got the Cocteau Twins, Heaven or Las Vegas, which just eked in here in 1990. Their 6th record. It's just a dream pop classic. It's I think 36 minutes. It's a breeze to listen to. 10 tracks, and it does enough, I think, to differentiate sonically from song to song, and yet it still keeps that cohesive album listening experience together, transports you to another world. Definitely one where you gotta get a good pair of headphones and listen to Liz Fraser's vocals take you to another world.
Same thing with Radiohead, by the way, your number one pick. Get yourself some headphones.
I mean, Cherry Colored Funk, Heaven or Las Vegas are among their best tracks. Ice Blink Luck is another one of my favorites on here, but really the whole record is just so lush and beautiful, man. So shout out to Heaven or Las Vegas.
Yeah, and I like that. I did listen to it, but I just, I don't quite get them like you get them. But I mean, that's the beauty of music. Now a group that you recently slandered on one of our live streams, I do believe it, Octone, baby. U2, 7 studio album.
I'm still a U2 fan. I think Joshua Tree, a little overrated. Octone's way better.
It is way better, and that's my hot take as well. Also sold 18 million copies. Produced by the great Daniel Lanois and Brian Eno. Mysterious Ways, Until the End of the World, one of the low-key great songs. It's written from the perspective of Judas. I mean, Who's Gonna Ride Your Wild Horses, Ultraviolet. I mean, this album is really, really good, and if you in your memory, if you haven't listened to these in forever, listen to the Joshua Tree, then listen to this one, and I think you're gonna agree with us.
Dude, no, you can't go wrong with that pick, Dad. And my next pick is gonna be a grunge record, but maybe not the one people expect. It's gonna be from my favorite grunge group, Alice in Chains, Dirt. Their 2nd record, 5 million sold. Again, very heavy listen, as Lane Staley, the great vocalist that he is, really kind of channels into some of his darkness, some of that addiction, depression, and overall pain that it causes. You have Wood, which is a fantastic closer. Them Bones, which just starts the record off so energetic. Rain When I Die is one of my favorite. Rooster, one of the great, I think, songs of the 90s as well. Jerry Cantrell on guitar is fantastic. If you love AIC, I think this is going to be your favorite of them. And if you don't, you don't, man.
Right. I remember the video for Rooster being on repeat. Now I'm going to go with something that I'm absolutely against, like, as a rule. The 90s albums were bloated and ridiculously long. And what do? I picked this song number 1 in the year it came out, and then I'm going to pick it at number 4 on my list. Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. Smashing Pumpkins, 121 minutes. Yeah, you got that right. That's 2 hours and 1 minute. 3rd album, debuted at number 1 in the U.S., the only number 1 album they had in the U.S. Billy Corgan aimed the album's message at people aged 14 to 24, hoping, quote, to sum up all the things I felt as a youth was never to voice articulately. All guitars in the album were tuned down a half step in order to make the music a little lower. Once you know that and you listen to it, you're like, oh, that's how they're creating those tones. So many styles and genres represented. That's what makes a 2-hour record good. Otherwise, it'd be brutal. Favorites are 1979 and Zero and Tonight.
Dude, yeah. Bullet with the Butterfly Wings, another one of my favorites.
Your sister
on there.
loves that song. Yeah. She's got it on repeat. That's a really good song too, and that was the first single off the album.
Yeah, and so I didn't know if you preferred this over Siamese Dream. They're both fantastic, and
it's a tough call. I guess I do because I chose it, but
the Smashing Pumpkins, one of my favorite 90s bands. I know they're polarizing, but
and Adore's not going to be on this list, but it's still a really good album. You just cut off the last 5 songs or 17 of them, so that's in there for free.
My next pick,
a lot of people are going to have number 1.
Yeah, one of the best-selling albums of the 90s of all time. 30 million sold. It's their 2nd record. It's Nirvana, of course. Nevermind. Even all this time later, Nirvana was the band that I first started listening to in college, in the grunge scene, and it started taking me off into more alternative type of music. So I always hold the band in a soft spot in my heart for that. I think it is one of the most important records of all time too. Just reading about how it just changed kind of music here in the States, at least.
It definitely did.
Of course, you have Smells Like Teen Spirit, one of the more popular songs ever. Come As You Are, Something in the Way, Lithium, and Bloom. I mean, it's just kind of a who's who of hits on this record. I also enjoy Drain You, Lounge Act, and Cobain's songwriting, I think, really spoke to the Gen X people at the time. The legacy of the band still lives on, still is, one of the top selling vinyl records year to year, even to this day. So
it is, and tons of kids wear t-shirts and they don't even know who Nirvana
That's right.
is, so that helps. All right, my fifth pick, right? Are we halfway through this?
I think so, yeah.
Reading, Writing, and Arithmetic. The Sundays. Barely gets in here, is in 1990. Debut album, 10 songs, a little under 39 minutes. Perfect, and what you're not going to see for the rest of the 90s. Put on the headphones, drift away. Harry Wheeler's vocals are fantastic. Melodies are greatness. Here's Where the Story Ends, really great. Top 5 UK hit. Can't Be, also great. Mm-hmm. They worked on it for over a year, went to number 4 in the UK, and they just got a strange story. They want to have everything. The two main principals in there are married, and they want everything to be perfect. And so there's a theory out there that they got tons of music they recorded but never released because they didn't think that it was perfect. So
interesting. No, that's I remember when I think you had that one on your list. Yeah. So
and you said, man, I'm gonna have to listen to that. And Trey, we're all this time later. Have you listened to it?
I have not, man.
Wow, you got a little bit more stuff on your plate. I would have taken this album.
Yeah, I'm going now. My next pick.
Definitely.
Great Mark Hodlis and Company with Talk Talk, Laughing Stock, their fifth and final record. He crafts those otherworldly soundscapes on this that range from free jazz to experimental and post-rock, and includes, I think, some of the great instrumental sections of the decade.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic... You can listen to this and tell, like, okay, this is the band given all they have left. They're making a mark, right? I think the way each track I think there's only 5 songs on here that builds, right. To a climax. Just so impressive. Again, a record that you want to play in full. I think that's what helps best experience, start to finish. Hollis definitely has been noted through band members and whatnot for having those perfectionist some
interesting stories about Mark,
right? And you can tell that on here. After the Flood and Ascension Day are my favorites, along with the cathartic and jazzy New Grass. So give that one a spin, y'all, if you have not.
Well, Trey, now we're gonna go to Biggie. The 1994 debut, Ready to Die, partly autobiographical, and only album released while he was alive. Big Pop is the standout. Juicy, One More Chance, 6 million albums sold. His ability as a storyteller is just, man.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's got one of the best flows ever. 17 tracks, 69 minutes. I never listened to this album either. Interesting with him, he's got Ready to Die. Mm-hmm. And then he's got Life After Death. It came out 16 days after he died in 97. So but Biggie, man, awesome. Just awesome.
No, I would have chosen that if you didn't. One of the great hip-hop albums of all time. You can't go wrong with that. And my next pick, we're going to Rage Against the Machine, people, with their self-titled, very intense, politically charged record. You look at the cover, you're probably not going to get a lot of acoustic ballads.
There's not going to be a lot of balladeers.
Right?
Yeah, you're not playing it for the girls.
Guitarist Tom Morello is fantastic. I think he's one of the great guitarists of the 90s. And then you have the passionate vocals, rapping conglomeration from Zach De La Rocha. And man, I think that they are able to blend that metal funk rap in a way that doesn't come across as forced. Like,
I agree.
We had a lot in the latter part of the decade, right? Killing in the Name, Bomb Track, Know Your Enemy, Take the Power Back. They're all highlights and still kind of resonate with the, I think, culture of the day. So
for sure.
have to give that some love right there.
Well, now we're going to go to what was my first foray into shoegaze. My Bloody Valentine, Loveless, we do have a reaction to this one up too, was recorded between February of 89 and September of 91 with vocalist and guitarist Kevin Shields leading sessions and experimenting with guitar vibrato, non-standard tunings, digital samples, and meticulous production methods. They hired 19 different studios and several engineers during the album's prolonged recording. Final production costs rumored to have been about £250,000, which is almost £500,000 right now. 11 songs, 48 minutes. You got to have on headphones. You got to listen to it all, and you got to have an open mind because it's going to be way different than you've ever imagined. Supposedly, Kevin actually did everything on here and went in and overdubbed other people's stuff in the studio later on. You need to watch. I think we did a review and not a reaction to it.
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
you need to go watch the review. It's probably under 20 minutes. It'll give you a lot of interesting stuff on this, but You can't hear the vocals a lot at first. It was very weird for me. The first time I listened to it, it's probably a good thing we didn't do a reaction to a review. I was like, what is this? But the more I listened to it, the more I got it.
No, man, I'm glad you included this on here. Sometimes is my favorite off this. Only Shallow is great. And
your sister actually likes this too. His sister's 15 years old. She listens to this quite a bit.
Nice, man. And yeah, just those swirling guitars. Just again, just something different than what you're maybe used to hearing if you're more just kind of in the rock and roll side of things. But my next record that I'm choosing, man, 9 Inch Nails, Trent Reznor and Company's Downward Spiral, second album, recorded famously at Cielo Drive, where Sharon Tate was murdered, of course, and produced by Flood, who did a lot of work with Depeche Mode in his day, and Reznor himself. Again, very bleak, dark type of record, man, but I think that's what helps it work, because it is a concept of a man who kind of just has a downward spiral.
Yeah, I mean, it says it all.
Culminates with the song "Hurt," where he commits suicide. And man, heavy listen, but I really think that this is where 9 Inch Nails peaked. And it's just a fantastic record. You have Closer on here, "Hurt," "Piggy," amongst some other tracks. So really good album right there that I had to draft.
Well, now I got Red House Painters 1, Rollercoaster. Their second album. It's a double album. Mark Kozelek, who is just outstanding. He's really outstanding on this. 14 songs. Wonderful journey. Varied. They recorded 23, with 8 being on the album they released after this. So that's how good it was. They recorded 23. You got 14 here, you got 8, so they only threw 1 out. Kozelek's lyrics focus on themes of pain, desolation, and loss, while musically the album runs from the folk pop of Grace Cathedral Park to the shoegaze of Mistress to the Stark, New Jersey, and onto the soundscapes of Funhouse and Mother. The most varied Red House Painters album that I listened to in the 90s. They appear on several of my lists, but a lot of their albums sound the same, the songs on the albums. This one's varied, and that's what got it this spot for me.
No, man, I think Kozelek's just a fantastic, very prolific too, throughout these past few decades, now with Sun Kil Moon. So who knows? He might be appearing in the 2010s whenever we get there.
I would bet he probably will be, just guessing.
But with only 2 records left apiece, I am going back to the hip-hop realm. Outkast, Aquemini, their best record in my humble opinion. Their third album, man, Andre 3000 is on fire every verse, but don't sleep on Big Boy as well. I think he shines on the gorgeous sounding, one of my probably top 5 Outkast tunes, Odie, Dopalicious, say that 10 times fast.
Spell it out, man.
CeeLo Green, Erykah Badu also make guest appearances on this record as well. Both those artists also have some great records in this decade too, but I think the art of storytelling is fantastic, and then the title track might be Outkast's best overall song. On top of that, the skits work really well together, and it's got a really just cool album cover on top of it. So everything I look for in a great record is on Aquemini.
Well, my 9th pick wasn't difficult. The only part difficult about it is which album was it going to be. So I went with Urban Hymns from the Verve. All 3 of their albums appear on my list. 3rd studio album, 19th best-selling album in UK history. Ooh. Lucky Man, Bittersweet Symphony, The Drugs Don't Work. I could just go on and on, but a really great album. Now, Bittersweet Symphony hit in the U.S., but otherwise I'd never heard anything by the Verve until we started this channel. But that album is absolutely fantastic, and so are their first 2.
No, man, that is a good record. It wasn't in contention for me, but I know you're a big Verve guy.
I'm a big Verve guy now.
The UK people love you, Sean.
I'm also a big Suede guy now. They didn't make. I'm not going to give away my 10th, but they didn't make my list. But Suede's awesome as well.
Well, for my final pick, man, I had a lot of thoughts. I was like, am I going to go Grace by Jeff Buckley? Yep. I know that was high. That was definitely in the mix.
Me too.
But I ended up landing on another 1990 record, barely eked in on this decade. We have Depeche Mode's Violator, their 7th record. Of course, you have Personal Jesus, Enjoy the Silence, Policy of Truth, one of my favorite Depeche Mode songs. Man, it's only 47 minutes. I think all the guys are in top form here. We actually did a listening party to this record as well. That's up on our Patreon page if you go in the back catalog there. For my last pick, I wanted something that I could move and groove to, and Violator hit the spot right there.
Yeah, well, my last pick, I was probably going to take Violator. It was among 5 albums. Grace was another one in there, but I ended up going with Black Love by the Afghan Whigs. 5th album. Greg Dooley had thought about producing a movie. He didn't, but this was kind of going to be a soundtrack to it. You've got Honky's Ladder, Going to Town, but the whole album is great overall. Afghan Whigs, we've done a song reaction or two to them, but I never listened to full albums. But Greg is absolutely outstanding. So that's it, boys and girls. That's our 90s list, and it's a longer video because it's 10 apiece. But let us know what you think down below. First, who won? And I mean, you spell my name however you want. S-H-A-W-N, S-H-A-U-N, S-E-A. I think you're going to get more votes this time. But
we already know. I'm
very eclectic list from me.
No, I was impressed. That's kind of what I try to do on my list too. Just in the 90s,
kind of the way the 90s were, man.
No, I think you start off the decade with kind of shedding some of that 80s veneer to it, and then obviously grunge comes onto the scene. Middle of the decade, hip hop really explodes. And in the midst of all this, you got a lot of neo soul going on. You have Britpop, of course, in the mid 90s,
which was something that I didn't know much of any of, right? And I just absolutely love, not just through this journey, but through a lot of stuff that our patrons have brought, man.
And towards the end of the decade, you shift to that new metal type of sound where you have a lot of artists kind of blowing up there. That would continue into the 2000s. So all that to say, man, just a lot of stuff going on in this 90s decade, and I think we represented it well between our two lists. So let us know your favorites of the 90s, of course, and we will be back next week with the year 2000.
Finally get into this century.
Looking forward to that, and until next time, thanks for watching, y'all. Happy listening, and we will see you.